is the Round Table.
We appreciate you sticking with us here on 13 ABC, Roundtable program for this Sunday, and we want to welcome you back and welcome up to the Roundtable Joshua Ball. He is a 28-year-old University of Toledo student, and Joshua, you wrote a letter a couple of weeks ago to the Toledo Blade, to the editorial section, basically taking dead aim at the city you grew to love, still love at this point. But I want to read you a little bit from his statement. He says, I was born and raised in Toledo, and I have spent my entire life here. I have always been a proponent for this community and all of its potential. He says, I always have been a firm believer in the American dream where anyone can accomplish anything as long as they work hard at achieving it. I still subscribe to this philosophy. I'm just finding it harder to believe that it rings true in Toledo. His statement continues, as much as it breaks my heart to admit, each passing day makes it unnervingly clearer. I love this town, but that love alone cannot guarantee a future here. You go on to say, fellow Toledoans, our city is dying. I love you, Toledo, and I have always defended you, but I refuse to believe that the American dream is dead. I hope you can find a way to change, but until you do, goodbye, old friend. Powerful.
I hope so.
Did you mean for it to be?
Well, I think whenever you write with passion, it becomes powerful. So I absolutely meant it to be.
When you put this together, you have been here all your life, you said. You went to Bowser High School. You paid your way through the University of Toledo. As you said in our phone conversation, you said, it's taken me time, but I'm paying my way through school, and I will graduate. And your degree?
Electronic commerce.
Talk to me about just from the outside, looking down on Toledo, why do you say Toledo is dying?
Well, you look at something like earlier this year, Forbes magazine, they ranked Toledo as the worst medium-sized city in the entire nation in terms of finding a job. And I think that's something that a lot of Toledoans already know and they're living with every day. And on a personal level, I've had a lot of friends and former classmates and associates that have had to leave Toledo to pursue their career simply because there are no jobs here. Now, as I said, I do love this city. You know, I was born and raised here. It's where my heart is. But I'm just starting to really question.
You still have family here?
Absolutely. Still have family here. But I'm just really starting to question the career opportunities that still exist. So in lieu of the current economic climate and the shortcomings, I think, of our current local government, you know, one thing is this upcoming mayoral election is probably one of the most important of my lifetime. And, you know, we have to rely on these elected officials to represent us as the people. And I think too often in the city of Toledo with our officials, it's something they just don't do well.
And you plan to vote here?
Oh,
in
absolutely.
this election, obviously, coming up in the primary. Now, what we did, we took your statement and we put it out there. You know, before we do it, just quickly, Fritz, I just get your read. Is this the sentiment we're seeing, not only from 28-year-old University of Toledo students, but do you feel he's not alone?
Everybody his age, your age, Joshua, feels this way. I'm a little surprised because you're almost 30 now. I have kids. I have 3 grown kids, all married. One just came back to go to UT Law, but the other 2 left, and my youngest had moved to Denver. I think you see this attitude a lot with younger people, but then Toledo becomes a wonderful place to raise a family if you've got a job. And I think that's the key to this, and that's what must change. I don't think it happens, though, at the governmental level. I think it happens. I think unions have a lot to do with killing jobs, and I just think we've been too dependent on one industry, the auto industry.
Right.
So there needs to be diversification. You know what? That's happening, though, slowly, with solar and with different other new technologies. You're in e-commerce. You could work anywhere, couldn't you?
I guess essentially, yes, I could, absolutely. But
why not stay?
Exactly. I mean,
but all your friends are gone.
A lot of them are, yes. And, you know, the few that have stayed, they're finding it's tough. It's tough out there, especially for college graduates, because the market is so saturated with graduates. The job opportunities out there.
People my age who have experience are competing with people your age.
Yeah.
I want to get to some of these statements from the mayoral candidates. We sent your letter to them. If they hadn't seen it already, some of them had. and we wanted to get a reaction. The first one, I'm not sure who we've got coming up first. It may be Jim Moody, who is the Republican candidate. He said, your guest is spot on with regards to our region's loss of our young people. I have talked to more parents and grandparents who have lost their children as a result of the lack of economic opportunity in our area, what Fritz just mentioned. And the sad part is it doesn't have to be this way. He continues on to say, I would encourage all young people to stay here and make a difference. Where there is no opportunity in the traditional sense, make your own. That's Jim Moody. Let's go down the line. Let's look at Mike Bell. He says, I read that article. And Mike Bell, being an independent candidate, he says, and it was important enough for me that I cut it out of the paper so that I could keep it as a focus for what we need to be able to do to turn this city around. He continues, if these are the young man's true feelings, then what we have to do is a lot of work to turn this place around and make people start believing in us again. I understand where he's at, and we'll use this article as a benchmark of where we need to be going. Real quick, those two, what do you think?
You know, with all due respect to the candidates, you know, they're agreeing with it. They're understanding the sentiment, but up until this point, nobody's really outlined a plan. Nobody's really put anything forth as to what it is we need to do to fix this. But I certainly have some hope in that they're acknowledging that this is true, and that, you know, that they at least have sentiment on working for it to fix it.
Keith Wilkowski is our next statement. Let's take a look at what he had to say in reaction to Joshua's letter. As a father of 4 children, I certainly understand his concern about having to leave Toledo to find a good-paying job. In fact, my son Greg, he says, recently moved to Washington, D.C. to take a position that matched his skills. And he continues, I understand that creating good-paying jobs is the key to our revitalization, and it is the only way that we can ensure that our young people will be able to make the choice to live and work in our city. As mayor, my top priority, it says, will be to make sure we have the best, the smartest, the most innovative policies in place to create and retain good-paying jobs in Toledo. I want to get to some of the other candidates. Quickly, D. Michael Collins, as you stated, we could blame the economy and the decline in the industrial base for a very critical situation, but I am in agreement that with you that Toledo and Northwest Ohio have exacerbated the problems. The public officials of Toledo deserve to bear a significant level of responsibility for our uncertain future. Now, he gets harsh here. He says, the city of Toledo has demonstrated a lack of trustworthiness and has treated all of our neighboring communities as lesser bodies of government rather than with the respect they deserve. This election is, in my opinion, he says, the most important election we have faced in many years. We as a community will survive and grow to our true potential only if we elect our leaders based on competence, leadership, and core values. Finally, Ben Conniff got in here. He says, I agree with his observations. In fact, the realities he discussed in letter form, the basis of his campaign for mayor and have been the focus of his agenda as a commissioner. His observation, he says, that the political system in our city is rotted and complacent is pretty much what I've been saying for the last several years. Also, my focus on making this a city that is welcoming for our young people starting their careers directly relates to his concerns. You've got the ear of these people. Now what happens?
Well, now I think it's the responsibility.
Or was this good enough?
Well, it's never good enough, right? But I think it's the responsibility for the voters to really push the candidates and say, okay, well, what specifically are you going to do? Now, I've read all of their plans, but they really don't outline. Mm-hmm. You know, you have a plan where these are the things you want to do, but how are you going to go about doing them? And so, you know, because the true power lies with the voters, but also the responsibility does as well, that we have to elect the right person for the job. I just think that we really have to push to start saying, okay, well, how are you going to achieve these things?
I want to say we did give an opportunity to Mayor Carlton Finkbeiner to bring a statement to us to get his response to Joshua's letter, and at the time of our taping, we had not received one. That's not to say I can't go into the newsroom and still see one there after our taping, but at this point we didn't. Fritz, final thoughts.
I just think it's a fascinating year. It's a fascinating time, and the sentiments that Joshua's voiced here are so common. You don't find this just among young people. You find this among older people as well. And this city must change. It must change at City Hall, but the individuals have to realize, I don't have to rely on City Hall for my livelihood and for my life. I think all of us here have to think about what we can do individually to make this place a better place to live. Think beyond the borders of Toledo.
And we might start seeing more letters to the editor. Who knows? Fritz, thank you so much. Joshua, good luck to you. We appreciate you taking some time. We'll be back with the Roundtable Roundup right after this.